Hello everyone, my name is Michael and I am speaking to you from the verse. Now if you're not sure what the verse is, I encourage you to go to my website at rewritingtheverse.com, and that's where you can find out all about the verse. There are many updates on there, most of which are the YouTube video records for over almost a year now. There's over 60 videos on there now, so feel free to go back and peruse. This particular video is connected to the upcoming 10/10/2020 portal, and I am a past life regressionist and rewriter, so I will be utilizing that skill to help raise our vibration and work our way through that portal. So what I'm able to do is I go back and I look at a particular past life regression, and I specifically ask to use timelines that are related to twin flames and or divine masculine, divine feminine timelines, as they seem to have a very powerful impact on raising our vibrations and helping us go up through these portals. And this is once again another ascension portal. So I have already looked at a past life regression tonight, and on this video I will go into details about what I saw. However, the rewrite part of it, where I can go back and alter the outcome, has not been looked at yet. I have found that that actually is very powerful to do live here with you on the video. So at the end of this video, we will do that together, and we will find out together how it impacts not only the lives of the people involved in the past life, but many times they will come forward into this time and impact on a greater scale. So we'll find that out together later on this video. And then after this video, I will record a short highlights video that will just talk about whatever it is that we find out at the end after the rewrite. So I will attach that link below on this video. And just a reminder to like, share, and subscribe if this is something that you want to see more of. Okay? So we'll go ahead and start. When I begin looking at a past life, the first thing I ask is approximately how many years ago are we looking at? And they told me, they being the guides and anybody else who may be helping with a particular timeline, so that this is approximately 800 years ago. So 1200 AD or so is what time. And then I also asked where we were at, and they said what is currently Bulgaria. So that is the location and the approximately time. So what I saw first in my mind's eye was green, a lot of green from trees. What looked like the bottom of some sort of a mountain, but it was so foggy and low clouds that you really couldn't see much more than the base of the mountain, and that it was just a lot of tree cover. A lot of pines, coniferous looking trees. And even though I didn't see a whole lot of fresh snow anyway, I did feel that it was pretty cold. Not necessarily the coldest time of year, but cold enough for the people to still be wearing furs and typical heavier clothing to keep them warm. So the first thing I see as far as people, now that I see the landscape and I know where we're at, they then show me a little girl. She's running. And at first I was like, okay, is she running from something, running to something? What? She was in a good mood. She wasn't being chased. But she was running and trying to get where she wanted to go quickly. And from what I could see of her, she had dark hair. Her little hood was back, so I could kind of see her hair were in braids, and round little face, brown eyes, all that. I'm guessing she was approximately 8 or 9 years old, and she was running home from, I guess, the equivalent of school, or at least something that was organized in the main little village that they were connected to. Her home was just outside the village. So she was running from whatever activities she was just involved in, and she's running home, and she's really excited, really excited. And actually what I was told pretty much from that moment, and even when she runs in the house, it had such a Christmas feel to it. And what I mean by that is not that I think they were necessarily Christians at all, but if you celebrate Christmas to some degree, you know what I mean about that family feeling, that appreciation feeling, that just the coming together feeling. I'm not even talking about the exchange of gifts or whatever. I'm just talking about that feeling. And most of you, whatever your particular beliefs may be, you may feel that at certain points of the year and certain celebrations of the year. And that's what I felt. It felt like it was just about Christmas, like the day before Christmas or something, you know, where you can feel it. It's about time to start to celebrate. So that's what I felt right off the bat, that was the energy. Another reason, I mean, I really got that she was a very happy child anyway, but you throw that onto it, and she was really excited to run home to her parents. So I see that she gets to their little home, and the mother and father are both there. It's a nice, quaint little one-room, house or whatever, pretty much like everybody else's in the village. And they're already there, and she comes bursting in the room, and the first thing she does is run over to Daddy. And Daddy scoops her up, lifts her up over his head, spins her around a few times. This is pretty much their usual greeting for each other. And I got very quickly that they actually are the twin flames in the story, or the divine masculine, divine feminine in the story. It's actually the father and the daughter. And the names that I was given, and I believe my guides are nice in giving me some short abbreviated names for them. So I'm not saying those are exactly their name, but what they told me for her was Bree, and for him, the father, Art, A-R-T. Again, I don't think those are their full names, but for ease for me, those are the names they gave me. So Art and Bree are our twin flames. And she's just, when you see a child that's really, really happy, which you don't see very often, just a great home life. I mean, both their parents love her and treat her well, and they love each other, and it's all love, love, love. And the little village that they're connected to is pretty well functioning, or high functioning. So it's really a great childhood for this little girl. And of course, being the apple of her daddy's eye. But her mom too, I get that they didn't have any other children after her. So she's an only child, and she gets all the love, but she's not spoiled. She's just a happy, well-loved and taken care of little girl. And the parents look happy, their relationship looks healthy, all these things. So, and it's absolutely, yes, it is the start of it's not really a festival. I'm getting a feast, like a 3-day feast. Whatever this holiday is that they're celebrating, I think it's an annual holiday. And it could be around this time of year. I'm not sure, but either way, it doesn't really matter. It's something that they celebrated, and it would probably feel a lot like the Christmas energy. And what they were excited about this day was the feasting began that evening. So the whole town was going to be there. And the town, I'm going to say, maybe a little over 100 people, 120 maybe at the most. It wasn't a whole lot of a whole lot of people. I was thinking about the number of children I saw at the feast later. I would approximate to like about 30. And I'm talking younger kids, like maybe 10 and under. And so whatever other adults were a part of the community added up to probably around 120 at the most, something like that. So it wasn't a really big community, but they were tight-knit. They were very peace-loving people. I don't get that they had much problem internally or externally, usually, with any kind of negative energy. So, and they're all excited. So they get washed up, they do whatever, and the feast, I could see even the wife was cooking something, or maybe even some pastries or something to bring later on that evening to the feasting. So it's going to be 3 days, at least in the evenings, of feasting. So this is, you know, a fun 3-day holiday for everybody. So they're all feeling excited, and they get ready and they put on their best furs, I guess, or whatever. And they walk into the village, and I see just dancing, the children dancing, the adults dancing, the adults and children dancing. It just plenty of alcohol, ale, whatever it is that they would have been drinking back then, but nobody out of control. This is not, doesn't get too messy, but you know, people are enjoying themselves, they're relaxing. It feels like a harvest type of celebration. Maybe again the end of the harvest season, as they might be getting into fall or winter, where whatever the case is, it feels like very much a harvest type of feast. And yeah, it's great. I'm seeing the whole family enjoying it. She's over there playing with the kids and running over to mom and dad and running over the kids, and just she's having a blast. The parents are enjoying each other. They're dancing, enjoying each other. There's a lot of love between the parents. It's beautiful. I mean, I would want to be there. It was a really great event. Unfortunately, and now it's getting definitely after dark now, and it's still, I'm going to say at least 9 or maybe even 10 at night, but people are still celebrating. And so, but it's dark, and it's definitely even more foggy than I saw earlier in the day. But what none of them see is that up towards that mountain, there's a trail of lights coming down the pass, which means torches. That there's some sort of well, we find out it is an invading, I don't know if you want to call it an army, because it actually is what barbarians, if you want to, that's what they would have considered these type of people to be. They were definitely invaders, and they had nothing good in mind. I mean, they definitely were, everything they came across, they intended to kill, ravage, or steal, or something. And I was told at some point that they had indeed planned it this way, knowing very well that not only this village, but I get that there's 5 other ones probably within a few miles in different directions, approximately the same size, also having the same feast. So they planned on coming in undetected, and so that they could hit several villages. If they could hit them all over the next several days, that would be great, especially knowing that there's feasting involved. Hey, there's going to be plenty of food. Oh, this is easy pickings, right? Especially if people aren't expecting any kind of invasion, they're not going to be ready to defend themselves. I mean, it was they were right. They had no resistance coming in under the protection of the fog and the trees. They couldn't see past the trees anyway. So, okay. Sure enough, again, the festivities are still going on, but it's getting a little quieter. But a lot of people are even just sitting wherever they were at, even falling asleep, just because there was no hurry to go home. They're just, let's just rest here, and you know, if they happen to be there the next morning, fine, no big deal. So most of the people, in fact all of them really, were still very much in the center of the town, where there was actually a big bonfire. I forgot to mention that. A big bonfire that lit up pretty much that whole area. So maybe a few smaller fires off to the side, but there was one main bonfire. And so it was quieting down. People were still talking, or you know, maybe dozing off or whatever. So they had no warning. In fact, what I get is that the barbarians, now let me describe how the barbarians dressed, how you could identify them. This particular group anyway. I'm sure there were others, but this particular group were known for wearing deer antlers. All of them, at least that I saw, looked small enough to be deer antlers. I suppose if there's elk over there, they might have had bigger ones. But anyway, for the most part, let's just say deer antlers. So they were known for wearing those. Definitely they were the furs and everything. They also wore skin paint or whatever on their faces. So they really did look fairly demonic. So it wasn't just that they were there to kill you or rape you or whatever. It was, on top of it, they look like monsters. And obviously they do that for a reason. Not only to strike fear in people, but, you know, they obviously, well, they just come from a different culture, obviously. And so they were, if you heard about this group, you knew that that's what they look like, basically, anyway. So, okay. And it's not that this group had not been heard of, but as far as the level of threat that they had towards this, I'm getting it was like a valley. So again, they come over this pass, and within at least that local area, there were at least 6 of those little villages. So, okay. Yeah. So they know ahead of time, at least the leaders rode horses. I don't think all of them rode horses. I think most of them were on foot. But either way, they knew to kind of snuff out their torches and surround the little village. Unbeknownst to most of the people that were really focused on celebrating, they were completely surrounded before they even knew what was happening. And then finally there were some that came in on some horses, and just this is what they had in mind, and this is exactly what they were doing. They immediately were trying to kill the men. There's no doubt that that was one of their main things. They did not want resistance to what they were doing, and they were really there to take what they could, if there was anything of any value, because they did raid all the houses. They also destroyed most of them, either by burning or damaging them pretty severely. But they also were there for the women and children, and mainly, pretty much that was the only reason, which was to rape them or kill them. And again, all the men were a target of being killed. So because there was no warning and they just had no suspicion that there was anything negative that could happen, none of the men in the village had their weapons. They were caught outside of their homes. Of course, some tried to get away, but they were surrounded by all these men that had weapons. So let's go back to Art, Bree, and the mother. They were there. They were enjoying life. They had a wonderful evening. They were all kind of snuggled up, cozy, and just maybe half asleep or whatever when this all started. So it's just immediately being physically attacked by all those men. And all I could see that Art could do, or the wife and the child, was to basically try to put his body between, there were 2 guys specifically coming towards them, to put his body between them and the guys, and do his best to try to keep them from getting to them, which was futile. I mean, these are people that know how to kill, and they had weapons. So as he tried to fight one back, and then the other, just ultimately he got hit on the right side of his head by some sort of a blunt weapon. So it wasn't a sword or anything, but it was something, I wouldn't say a hammer, or something just really heavy like that. Hit him really hard on the head, and yes, it did bleed, but it really was more of it caused a bad concussion, which knocked him out immediately, which actually, what I was told, saved his life, because if he had shown any signs of life in that moment, they would have killed him. They would have made sure he was dead, because that, again, was their main objective up front, was to kill off all the men. So once he was down, and like the last thing he hears is his daughter and wife like yelling and crying and begging and whatever, as he's down for the count, and they're about to be dragged off farther back into the village. So he's out cold actually the whole rest of the night. It's a really bad concussion. But there's nothing he would have been able to do. If he had actually, like I said, if he had come to and tried to fight anybody off, they just would have killed him. But anyway, by the time around sunrise, the invaders leave. They start to march on to whatever, actually the next village. They do intend to keep doing this as many times as they can in the next few days with the same kind of strategy. So it's not until the last of them leave that the women, mainly the women, I mean there's still children alive too, but mainly the women that are still alive are able to come out of the different little homes or wherever they were held all night, and yes, raped, probably tortured in many ways, and not just the women, but the children too. Many of the children, including Bree. So yes, both his wife and his daughter were raped that night, brutally. So, but at least once the group leaves, the women can start to come out and look for their husbands, or look for anybody that they didn't know where they were at already. And his wife and daughter do come over, and they, thank goodness she checks. Otherwise, she really, the wife, I never did get a name for her, does realize that he's still breathing. So, okay, she is able to get him to wake up to a certain degree. And between her and the daughter, they help him get back to the house, actually, which they did not destroy because it was far enough away from the village. They didn't bother looking for the smaller home, and there were a few other homes back in the back like theirs were that were untouched. But for the most part, the rest of the village, the main part, was pretty much decimated. That was the word they were given to me. They gave to me to describe it. Decimated. And so they get him back, and it takes, I'm going to say, at least a couple weeks before he's really in a place to be able to even really walk and actually eventually get in and up to the village to see the destruction. And what I'm told, basically, again, the agenda was to kill the men off. And they killed all of the men except 5. And the only reason any of them survived was similar to his story, that they were injured and left for dead. I mean, they thought that they either already were dead or were about to die, so they didn't finish it off. That is the only reason those 5 men even survived at all. So they all had injuries of some sort. And then, yes, even some of the women had been killed. Some of the children had been killed, maybe a few even taken, but for the most part, people were killed. And so really it became a village of women for the most part with so few men. I just really get that I kept getting the idea that eventually maybe they formally become like a nunnery, just because it's pretty much all women, other than a few young boys that might have survived, and these few guys that survived, it's all women. It's really a hard life after that. It's definitely, it went from probably one of the most amazing places to live to now one of the worst places. Survival, absolutely survival. Just even getting some sort of, I got that they had to make some sort of larger, okay, I just got the word barn-like structures, just big structures that people could at least sleep in and have some sort of cover from you know, the elements. Didn't have these nice little homes or cottages or whatever. Oh no, it's back to basics. Really, it's survival for sure. And I just get, and that they did go around and do that to at least a few of the other villages too, so that whole area gets really wiped out. I'm being given the word right now, a racial scar. I interpret that as an event big enough to leave a very deep wound in the, let's say, spiritual psyche, or the psyche of the people from that region. That at this point I'm getting that never really healed. Okay, that's new. They didn't tell me that until now. And obviously it was horrible for the men. They all got murdered for the most part, but the women, survived. And not only did they go through the rapes and the torture and whatever other hardships, but then, yeah, they were responsible for carrying everything from then on. So, So, yeah, not a pretty scene at all. And even though, oh, by the way, Art and his family were considered the lucky ones of their group, because one, they had one of the male survive, which was rare in their group, but also both of the wife and the daughter survived too. Nobody got killed off, basically. Yeah, they went through injuries and torture and all that, but all three of them physically survived. So they were actually considered one of the luckiest families in their village. But surviving isn't necessarily, that there's a lot of scars on the other side of the trauma as well. And that bright-eyed little girl that ran and jumped into his arms and was so giddy and happy, you never saw that in her eyes ever again, no matter how far down the road it was. And his wife too. It absolutely affected them all. They could never get even close to what they experienced before, even though they physically survived. Yeah. And yes, they were a key part of helping keep the village going and adjusting to whatever had to be adjusted to, but yeah, it was pure survival after that. Pure survival. Not just for them, but surrounding groups as well. So, oh, well, I forgot a piece, but this actually leads us into the rewrite, so I guess I wasn't meant to tell you this piece until now. So once I see a past life, I then ask my guides to show me where the best place to intervene is so that there could be a higher level outcome. I need a drink of water, hold on. Okay, so what they did show me in the first version was that when the little girl got home, and remember I said he scooped her up and twirled her over his head and everything, was that it was pretty typical when she came home from school or whatever she was out doing, anything, that she would want to fill daddy in on what she was doing. So once he sits down, she's like all animated, talking about whatever she was doing with her little friends earlier in the day. And so it was pretty typical. And both him and his wife, they would listen, and and so she was very animated that day about all the things she and her little friends had done. They told me that much. They didn't really go into details about what specifically she said in the first one, but she did have that reporting to do after whatever school. So okay, so this is the point that they asked me to go back and look at, specifically when she is sharing about her day, and she's all excited. Like I said, in the midst of it all is this amazing energy of excitement, all three of them. And maybe in part this is why it was missed the first time or whatever. But in this version, Art is going to notice an important piece that he apparently didn't act on in the first round. So she talked about several different things. And then she talked about a man that looked like a deer. And standing like over behind a tree or something, she happened to see him. And in fact, she might have been the only one to see him. Now, being that they live out in nature, and I don't know what kind of religion they had, but maybe they believed in nature-y beings. I don't know. So for whatever reason, just saying that he looked like a deer, which would indicate the antlers, that did not, it didn't necessarily trigger anything for Art. However, she's still talking about him. And then here's the piece that she did mention, and it went through Art's head just like, that's weird. Like, that's odd. But you know, the imagination of an 8-year-old, and who knows what kind of spirits they had out there, you know. She did mention this. However, the first one, he didn't take action on it. But this time he really hears it. And she said it was weird, or however she phrased it, because he had something stuck in his nose. Something sticking out of his nose. And she thought that was funny. Maybe that's it. Because she thought it was so funny. Because the whole thing, none of that scared her at all. She was just laughing. Yeah, he had something hanging out of his nose. Well, this is the part where Art realizes that that group apparently is also known for piercings, like bones stuck through their noses and their ears, and probably other body parts too, but especially on their face. Actually, that's one thing I didn't mention that earlier today. Yes, they're also known for those kinds of things, especially using bones. So he actually asked her a little bit more, like, what was sticking out of his nose? And she could, not like she was right up next to him apparently, but enough to see that it was white, which again, there's the bone hint. So I'm feeling, so this is where things change, okay? We're about to do the rewrite. I won't formally do it until a little bit once we see it unfold a bit. But this is, from this point on, I'm not sure how it's going to go either, because this is where we're going to change the timeline and see how it will unfold. And the difference is he really hears this about something being in his nose. And when she goes, oh, it's white, because that part hadn't been said earlier, because he hadn't asked earlier about it. I think she said, yeah, he had something in his nose, you know. And it didn't get explored. Once she said white, he thought, uh-oh, that really could be a bone. And if that's the case, antlers and the bone, we've got a problem. So he's getting serious now. As much as he doesn't want to lose that Christmassy spirit or whatever, he's like, okay, trying to explain to the wife, we gotta go. I need her to show me exactly where this is, because if this is what, and I can see the concern on her face too now, because she's putting 2 and 2 together as well. That he's gonna take her to the spot and try to identify exactly if it really was a person or a horse or what, you know, something other than a real deer or something. So she understands, and he quickly, I mean, little girl's trying to keep up because he's got to go find out. So she takes him exactly where she saw him. And yes, they're all hunters out there. So he knew that he could tell that there was a human there, a human feet. And he does follow the footprints in the snow far enough to see that he did indeed have a horse and could see the tracks led off up towards that pass, or at least going in that direction. That's all I needed to know. He ran back into the village, asked somebody to watch his daughter for him, gathered the council, and at least the highest people, because this is just earlier in the day of that feast. They had no time to waste. If there truly was a threat, and they knew if they were coming, it was not going to be just like 10 of them. This was going to be the army of them that they had heard about. So they all acted very quickly. They decided, okay, they decided to send, because there's 5 other villages, all within probably at least 5 miles of this city, or this little village. And they send somebody out to each one of them on horseback. They do have a few horses, just like to help them and get like drag wood or whatever they use them for. Anyway, those 5 horses are used to go in 5 different directions, to run as fast as they can, talk to the chiefs or whatever of those villages, and as many men as possible need to come, because this particular village is the closest. It is the first one. Once they get down to the pass, this is the first one that would get hit. So they're putting out the request that every, even teenage boy probably, but at least on up to the men, come with their weapons, bring anything they can to defend themselves, because well, these people are known for their ruthlessness. They know it's going to take more than just their little village to stop this onslaught. So it's all very fast moving. People are running out, and it gives basically just enough time for the other villages to organize, get their men, because they're all going to have to run or walk to get to the to that central village to have to deal with the threat. So that's happening. The women of this village are told to get all the children, all the women, all the children, all the elderly, anybody that can't fight, basically. There is a large cave not too far that they can get everybody to, and they can cover their tracks. It's important that they cover their tracks in case it does end up getting fought right there, that they can't easily at least find out, because they'll be sitting ducks, obviously. So that's where Art's wife and his daughter Bree go. So Art does have a sword. The men in this village do have weapons. They just don't carry them around. They don't need to typically carry them around. So he had a sword, but it wasn't very much use in his house that day. But none of the other men were really ready for anything. They didn't even like typically carry knives on them unless they were going hunting or hunting or something. So now I get that there's over 500 men from those villages now, all now at the village. It is getting dark now, so we're only a few, I want to say, I feel like it was like around 9 p.m. when they started coming down that hill. So anyway, only a few hours away from when they would actually start to come down, and the decision is made to actually go up and meet them at the top of the pass, because once they get down in the valley and they're able to maybe get around, plus we don't need them to know what's down in the valley. They haven't ever been down there before, so what do they know is down there? They could know that they don't know if there's 500 men or 5,000 men. If you're in a small area. So one, catching them off guard by attacking first, or at least being right there in a very small area. Like I said, they can't really gauge how many men they have, but 500 is way more than they would have had it just been this one little village trying to defend itself. So yes, the women of that village are off in the cave, and the children, they're all off in the cave. The women and children in the other villages are where they're at, but they know to stay alert. And if they don't hear something by a certain time, that they all have escape routes too. So yeah, they have their own their own weapons, and they march up that hill or that mountainside. It's a pass is what I was. So basically they're going up this one route or trail that the others are going to be coming up, we know are going to be coming up that other side. They have their torches too. They have their torches too. They have to get up. I'm just telling you what I'm being told. They have to get up and slightly over that pass so that they can't see that it's not that long of a torch trail behind them, you know. But from the top, they have no idea. If they're on the other side, they have no idea how many more are back there. So anyway, that's their goal. They have to hoof it up that hill. Most of them don't have horses, so they're all having to move pretty quickly to get up that pass, enough for the front of the group to be able to stop them in their tracks. And they do, barely. I mean, it took, yeah, they were cutting it close all day long, trying to get this going. I feel like Art actually is, whether it's just because he's the one that figured it out first, he was pretty much the one maybe calling the shots for his village, because all the villages sent their chiefs. So that he's one of the ones towards the front. And, you know, their leaders and him and his leaders, they all come to a standstill on this pass. Actually, I'm getting it's pretty steep on one side, at least where they end up meeting. So, you know, if there is too much actual fighting right there on the pass, a lot of people are even going to fall down that one side. So it is a very narrow area, but it also, it evens the playing field for the villagers. That's what I got. So, trying to think, because I feel like they know these people are known to be ruthless, known to be very fearful because of the way they wear their paint, and they do intend to scare people. So if they walk up there looking scared and everything, they're not, you know. I feel like they also have to come with some sort of the word is shock and awe. Now I don't know what it is, but shock and awe, which when you're facing people like that, I don't know what's going to scare them. Okay, well, here's what I'm being told. Again, actually the men from the villages, maybe not all of them, but many of them had swords. So technically their weapons were more advanced. I feel like whatever he got hit in the head with was a very blunt tool. Something maybe made out of rock or what, you know, so even though they were fierce and yes, they could kill people with those weapons, they weren't the top level weapons. But it was more than just that. I feel what I'm getting is, I don't know if there was such a thing as gunpowder per se back then, but something like that had that explosive ability that the barbarians most likely would have never seen before, and certainly would have been seen probably as magic or something if you had never heard of such a thing. So I feel like that's something like that is going to give them the upper hand, even though their numbers are not that great. And they're not necessarily the best fighters ever either, because they don't fight very often. They're just going to have to come up with something bigger and scarier to the other ones. So I feel like there's some sort of negotiating trying to happen, but I think there's definitely a language barrier there. They're trying to do things peacefully, at least the villagers, but they know who they're dealing with. These people definitely have a reputation. I feel like either Art is the one carrying the little grenade kind of things, or I never really did get what his job was there in the village. I know he had to have done something. Now I'm thinking maybe he had a sword also, because maybe he's like a blacksmith or a whatever the equivalent is for swords. But I feel like somehow he has the ability, or he might have had the grenade, or at least the whatever it was that would create sparks and have something, you know, like a firecracker or firework. Something like that. Anyway, I feel like somehow he is connected to at least the making of those things. In fact, I get every single one of those men have at least one of those things. Everybody from the villages. So the 500 men, they all have at least one of those things. Now, yes, it would probably, if it's gunpowder, whoever it hits and whoever's next to it, yes, they may actually die in that. But really it was more about just trying to scare them. Get them off of that pass. Because once they got into that pass, they'd be able to, well, run wild like they did the first time. So this was their advantage. And it was like, okay, imagine here they are, they're on this, there's a steep cliff going down this way, and it's not a very wide, maybe 6 to 10 feet wide, so there's only room for a couple of horses or whatever, or people to maneuver through here. And I can hear and I can feel the men on the barbarian side are starting to, I think they're chanting, but they're like making a rumbling sound, basically. Kind of like, you know, okay, negotiations have failed. They're about to charge. I mean, that's pretty much, and it was getting louder and louder, and you could feel the frenzy, and, you know, the villagers were like looking at each other. So I get that yes, you've got the leaders up front, and they all have probably at least one of these grenades too, but behind them, basically, is a group of men that have a lot of those grenades. And so instead of arrows and bows, I feel like these grenades are the equivalent of that. Like they throw a volley into those men, just like, not necessarily trying to hit one in the head or anything, just into the men, because it's about scaring them. And the ones in front have horses now. So if it scares a horse, so that's the response to that rumbling and about to kill you screaming. And I just, for the ones in the front that are on horses, oh, those horses are riling, I don't know, when they get back on their hind legs, because they're scared. Whether they got hit by it or just scared by it, I'm seeing bodies and horses start to roll down that side of the mountain. And then their leader, now he's still on his horse, that they didn't hit close enough to him, but there were definitely people behind him that are either struggling to keep their horses from falling off that cliff or whatever. But it shut them up. It shut them up. That rumbling stopped. So I do believe this is the first time that that other leader has ever seen anything quite like this. Well, and I guess if you were pretty close to him, you could actually see fear in his eyes. I'm getting the, even if you couldn't see it, there was fear in his eyes, because I don't think he felt fear too often. They were pretty dominating. I don't know what he's saying exactly, but I think he's still trying to, you know, the bravado thing. Even though the men behind him look rather disturbed now. And see, here's this thing. It's not like they can just, now if they're standing and they've been walking, that's one thing. These horses can't just turn around on this cliff. Yeah. There's a problem right there, at least with the horses up front. And he's over there trying to, you know, he doesn't want to stop his campaign. He's got lots of ideas of what he wants to do to this valley, and he's not going to let some little whatever that was stop him. Problem is, you might want to keep going forward, but if your other however many men you have don't feel the same, so when it's clear that he's still barking and threatening and whatever, they throw some more. And again, we've got a similar situation where again, those horses up front are definitely starting to fall, and obviously they're riders, and there's more people behind because they're all kind of squished together. Those horses are backing up or whatever is definitely making some of them fall off, and there's definitely some yelling happening, and not like we're gonna kill you yelling, but let's get the hell out of here yelling. I think that it was planned not to hit the leader, because the whole point of this was to create a stigma of how powerful this valley was. You don't want to come back and mess with us. You do whatever you want somewhere else, but you don't come back here. So if you kill the leader off, and then everybody wants to avenge the leader, and it was purposeful that they were trying not to kill the leader if at all possible. So actually, you got to get that these are really peaceful people, and they're coming up with this little plan. And it's working, because here's what I see. When he's still standing there after the second time, but now he's looking shaky. Now he finally looks like he's rethinking this plan. Now the villagers, again, there's some horses up front, the leaders, and Art is one of them, are on horses, and a few others behind them, start moving forward. Now again, they're only maybe, I don't know, 10 or 15 yards away from him or whatever, so it's not like he's got much time to think. And they take a step forward. So he's gonna have to make a decision now. And the guys behind him are freaking out now, the ones especially on the horses, but the ones behind them, they're all getting something's, and there's this pow too, you know, this loud sound that they're probably all hearing back there. These gunshot type of sounds. And they're taking another step forward. And another step forward, and his horse starting to back up. Now, some of the horses are gone behind him, and some of them are actually some people are dead. Because it is a gunshot. It's killing some people. So now he's got some people behind him that his horse is going to have to maneuver around. Okay, so is it Art saying this or one of the other? Again, they're all moving as one. So whichever chief actually says this, basically, if you don't leave right now, we're going to kill you all. Now, I'm not saying they weren't planning on killing as many as they could, but the odds of them being able to kill them all was probably pretty slim, but still, they did intend to do what it was going to take to defend their valley. But I feel that a gesture is made that actually, if I'm feeling like it's a higher level, a more civilized level of conversation. But I'm hearing whatever chief say it, that they can pick up their men that is still either injured or dead right there, will allow you to pick them up and take them with you, you know, bury them in peace or whatever. That was a civilized way of negotiating or ending a battle, apparently. And I really see, because this is so different than how the barbarians function, they could care less about at least other people being buried. But he actually, well, he pointed to his men to go pick them up, and that moved something in him, is what I got. It moved something in him that they were willing to do that. Now, granted, he could have come back at a later time with a bigger army, found out what that boom stuff was so he could get some for himself, but that was the piece. Not their superior fighting power or superior weapons, but the fact that they actually respected what? Respected them? Respected the dead? What did they respect? It gained his respect that they offered this. Hold on, this is an important piece, because this is what changes everything, really, because this is what keeps him from coming back another day and then eventually being caught off guard. They got lucky this time. They got lucky that Bray saw a weird antler looking deer person over there. That's the only reason that they had time to do anything. So I'm trying to understand what that last piece is that he was so impressed with. Respecting the dead, respecting. Burial rites, I believe. And I feel like whatever the barbarians do, whether it's, I feel like it might be kind of like Viking pyres or something, you know, where they create the altar thing and they burn their bodies. That they have beliefs about the hereafter, and that there's certain ways you want, whether you're a warrior or what, to be buried. And they honored that very much. So the fact that they were being allowed to take their dead back wasn't even about the wounded ones that could survive. It was more about the dead. That confused him so much, but that he appreciated so much. And so as all the injured and all the dead ones were picked up, he chose to never come back. I don't know if he really articulated that or not, but in that moment he chose to leave these people be. Leave these people be. They earned his respect. It happened on rare occasions for him, but yeah, it's a good thing they didn't kill him. It really is. Whoever made that decision made the right decision. Because if they just killed him off, because they could have just thrown one right at his head, right? Blown his antlers right off, right? Sorry, I don't know why that's funny, but yeah. If they'd killed him, he would have been avenged. But by giving him this opportunity to choose otherwise, now he's taking that decision back, and they aren't going to focus on the valley anymore. They'll purposely go around it if they have to, but not even because he absolutely believes that their army is superior, but because they earned his respect. That's why they'll be left alone. And so I see them turning, the barbarians are turning around and making their way slowly down the pass, and they're not going to leave that spot until they're clear that they've at least gone down out of sight, or clearly are leaving, because yeah, they might come running back the moment they think that they're gone. So yeah, that first night of feasting was actually everybody making sure they were safe. And then they did make their way down. They left some guys up there on top, though. Again, probably wise to just be sure that at least we have some scouts watching that pass, just in case. But they actually never had any problem with them coming back. So even though that first night was about survival and try not to all get killed off and everything, they still had the rest of those 3 days to celebrate, and they celebrated more than they had. Because, I mean, you want to talk about appreciating life even more? Oh, just, they knew how close they came. At least the adults did, how close they came to being annihilated that night. And the rest of the valley would have probably suffered that way too. So all of the men eventually go back to whichever village they're from, and they are able to celebrate. Truly celebrate at a whole nother level. And I see, that following night especially, when they are able to enjoy the bonfire, and they are able to dance, and they are able to do all this stuff, and he's twirling his little girl around again over his head, and hugging on her and kissing on her, and his wife. I mean, they all, again, the little girl may not realize how close, but the adults do realize that they were given a gift. I mean, they were already celebrating life with that feast, but this is another level. I feel like they're telling me a little bit more about, I haven't even formally rewritten it yet. Actually, should we do that now? Yeah, we should go ahead and rewrite it now formally. So it hasn't been formally rewritten yet. And then I think they might give me a little bit more information about the barbarians. So I'm declaring that time is flipping right now, back 800 years ago, to this new timeline. This new timeline. Restoring families, restoring communities, because this is now the opposite energy of what they experienced that first time. They're even stronger together now. Those various villages coming together to support each other, it took every single one of them, and the ingenuity of the people in those all those chiefs coming together as one to survive that, and they did it. So community, powerful leadership. They didn't have to raise a sword. They didn't have to raise a sword. Yes, a few people did die on that pass that day, but not like it would have been. And actually, with at least one person dying, the idea of honoring a dead person is what moved the barbarian chief. So whatever the case is, it is about life. Preserving life, respecting life, and actually, at least for the barbarians, respecting the dead. Respecting people's spiritual beliefs, their religious beliefs, their rituals, whatever. So now that is, I feel it starting to come into this timeline right now. In fact, I feel it in my throat. That's interesting. My throat chakra. So maybe there is something about speaking or needing to speak about this. Sorry, I need to figure out what they're trying to communicate right now. Okay, here's what they're telling me now about the chief of the barbarians. You see, they planned that attack specifically on a spiritual celebration, 3-day attack. I mean, they attacked specifically on those days where it was really about honoring life. It was a ritual that the villagers had in their own belief system about celebrating life. And knowing very well that they would not be in any way armed, all that. They planned it specifically that way. Plus, they'd get a lot of food out of it because of the feasting. But ultimately, he realized that he wasn't respecting their rituals or beliefs either. Now, even though they're barbarians, does not mean these people are stupid, okay? So, if I indicated that at any point in time, let's make that clear. These are smart people, intelligent. They have their own beliefs. They have their own culture and all this. And obviously, at least some of their culture, they highly regard. As far as like the death rites and things like that. Very important to them. So even though he could care less about, I guess, what this feasting was about, he realized, though, that yes, that was basically the equivalent of a spiritual ritual of theirs, and that he actually violated something by doing it, at least on that day. Had it happened in some other way, he might not feel this way, but he actually saw where he... This is where he equated his behavior to barbaric. That he had not valued whatever their cultural, spiritual beliefs were, and yet he expected his to be honored. So there was some part of him that realized that, that there was growth for him too, right? So throughout all of this, he ends up leveling up too. And I'm not saying that he stopped going out and invading, but he became what do I want to say? It's kind of like going from the knight to the king as far as the level of maturity, wisdom, whatever. He definitely leveled up in that. He leveled up. So I'm just going to ask real quick if there's anything about what happened back then, how that's going to impact now, if at all. Okay, I'll just tell you what somebody just put in my head is Christmas is coming early this year. And again, not the physical Christmas, but the feeling of generosity, of love, of family, community, People think about other people that are in hardship a lot more during those festive days when they're eating and their stomachs are full, but they know somebody over there is starving in a shelter. Okay, so they're saying Thanksgiving. I feel Christmas type of energy, but Thanksgiving is kind of a precursor to that, even though it's like more of a one-day thing or a long weekend thing, because it is about family again and being thankful. But because of the feast specifically, that's maybe why they're referencing more of a Thanksgiving energy, or maybe it's just both wrapped into one now. Can't have too much love and gratitude, can you? Why not really just carry that energy, well, all year long if possible, but it doesn't have to just be on those days. There is a lot, and I just saw 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 11 seconds. Maybe we have a new beginning to celebrate. That's what all those ones tend to mean to me. Something brand new. Something we've never fully experienced before, and I would say that that's what happened even back then, 800 years ago. The level of love and excitement and gratitude that group was already experiencing before the catastrophe has just gone up another level, but a deeper level. It's not about, again, they didn't exchange gifts and stuff like that, but there's something even more to be happy about. So I'm gonna take that 1111 as confirmation that something new is beginning. We are beginning something very new. And if Thanksgiving, at least the American version of it, was based on the first year, I'm assuming it was the first year that the Pilgrims were in America, celebrating a new way of life, a new culture, a new possibilities. Well, now we have a whole new level of that right now. I feel like something has shifted in this. I'm having a hard time articulating it. It's a deeper level of gratitude. It's a deeper level of understanding, of happiness, of joy, and appreciating what you have. Neither one of those groups got rich or whatever other things we might associate with abundance, but they had each other. And many more lives were spared as well in that whole situation, in the rewrite. So, yeah, even the leaders were able to change their thinking and value life even more. Leaders valuing life? Now that's one, actually, is that what they're trying to get around? That could be happening. Because right now, we have plenty of people on this planet that would like many of us not to be here. That's the reality of it, people. And if we can get what just happened 800 years ago to affect that is a game changer. That's a game changer. We can end this war. There is a war going on, especially behind the scenes, that many people aren't aware of or they choose not to be aware of. And it needs to end. It absolutely needs to end, and it needs to end with as little loss of life as possible. That may have just changed something right there. I'm going to say that's a real possibility right now. And we are, I'll just say it, we are on a cliff with people wanting to kill each other. We are. We absolutely are. And if something doesn't change, well, people are going to get decimated. So that change in that chief may have been what all this was about, at least in part. About. At least he's got a lot more maturity now than he did before. And he's not going to be so quick to want to kill people. He gained a respect for life. He had a lot of respect for death, but not so much for life. And now that's changed. And now there's been 800 years of that on this planet with that group. And that's had an opportunity to get, you know, those ideas to get put into the mainstream, basically. Valuing life. Honoring life. That's the key now, isn't it? For both sides to be able to walk away with their heads held high. Well, yeah. It had nothing about who had the bigger, better weapons. That's not what changed his mind. He would have been back. Oh, he would have been back for sure. Even more angry and determined to kill than he was the first time. If they'd killed, well, him, either killed him or didn't allow them to pick up their dead. But somebody had the wisdom to honor their culture, knowing probably fairly well that that was really important to them to be able to do that. So, respecting each other's cultures, each other's beliefs, and respecting life and death, I suppose. Both. So that's it. We have now formally rewritten that. And the leaders of this planet have shifted. Well, even the villagers shift too. Obviously they gained from that as well. But even the dark side shifted. Is shifting right now. So I guess we'll see in the news in the next month or two. Because what did I get? An early Christmas this year. So I'm looking forward to that. All right, everybody, again, if you like this, please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, peace and joy.